Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
British meat exporters say new customs systems post-Brexit are not fit for purpose. Perishable goods are being delayed for hours, sometimes days, because of extra customs checks and additional paperwork. The new border rules were introduced 2 weeks ago at the end of the Brexit transition period. The UK exports £15 billion worth of food and drink to the EU every year. A third of it is perishable meat, fish and fresh produce. The trade body says meat exports to the EU are currently at 25% of their normal volumes for this time of year. Our business editor Simon Jack's report begins at a meat processing factory in Shropshire.
UK lamb is highly prized. At this Shropshire-based abattoir, 70% gets exported to the EU. It's an export-driven success story. But the well-oiled machine that gets it there has a new spanner in it. Paperwork that used to take 15 minutes is now taking hours and also requires vet certificates not needed before.
So we've been having sleepless nights, we've been taking calls from the hauliers, from the agents, early hours of the morning. It has been a huge, steep learning curve, and we see some of these problems will remain even once we get to the new normal level. For fresh quality product trading on a daily basis, this system is not fit for purpose and it needs to be looked at urgently.
Risland's products are still getting through, but delays are shortening shelf life, making his customers frustrated and forcing them to consider other options.
I feel very upset about this situation. We're thinking to buy some lambs in Spain. So we have some of our competitors who have ordered their lambs in Ireland instead of UK.
Between the seller and the buyer are the hauliers. No one is feeling more frustrated than Pete White.
We travel all over Western Europe every single week. And last week for me was probably the worst, most difficult week I've had in this job in 20 years. We have lost hundreds of hours, dozens of days already with our trucks that are waiting unnecessarily.
Behind us here, we're looking at the new border control post that Customs have set up.
Near the mouth of the Eurotunnel in Kent, Customs expert Stephen Cock says problems on the way out mean problems on the way in.
We have a situation where Border Force's car park is full, the roads are heavily congested, they're turning lorries back now. Exports are grinding to a halt at the moment. If you've got a lorry that is going to get stuck on its way out, then if you're the haulier, why would you want to bring it in the first place? So it will snarl everything up, import and export.
It has been a pretty miserable time for hauliers, for their drivers and for their commercial customers. And remember, the problems we've seen are at a time when the port's operating at a fraction of their normal volume. Those volumes are expected to increase. And while let's hope that any potential chaos will be short-lived, it seems clear that additional cost, additional complexity on trading with our biggest trading partner are here to stay.
After decades of friction-free trade, there was bound to be disruption. The government says it's working hard with business to get to what it describes as a new normal in cross-channel trade. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Now, officials have admitted that up to 200 lorries a day are being turned back at UK crossings into the European Union because they don't have the right paperwork. But they insist the vast majority are getting through. But traffic through the UK's second largest port, Holyhead, has slumped since the start of this year, in part as more lorry drivers are choosing to travel directly between Ireland and mainland Europe, bypassing the UK. Our Home Affairs correspondent Andy Davis is there. Andy.
Well, like other UK ports, they'd long anticipated issues at the end of the Brexit transition process, but as someone said here, they thought it would be queues of lorries being the main problem, not half-empty ferries. There are lots of factors at play, as you'll hear, but it's those issues surrounding customs and other checks which many tell us are now driving this boom in new crossings from Ireland direct to mainland Europe. Now, those are longer crossings, they're more expensive, but for some it is involving less paperwork and far less potential for disruption than by using this traditional UK land bridge. And that means a major port like this being bypassed. The local council is worried, the Welsh Government increasingly so. At first light in Holyhead this morning, they're ushered through onto the decks of the Estrid. one of Stena's newest super ferries bound for Dublin. But look beyond and the lorry park is largely empty. So too the upper deck, where the staff stand by, but there are no more trucks to load. It is barely half full. Little wonder they're moving the Estrid onto a new route in the weeks to come, trialling it this weekend, bypassing Holyhead and swapping Anglesey for Normandy.
This weekend, we have to go where the demand is, and unfortunately we'll be taking the Stena Estrid off this route from Dublin to Holyhead and moving it directly from Dublin to Cherbourg, and that's the first time we've sailed direct from Dublin to Cherbourg. We have to go where the freight demand is.
We filmed here in January 2 years ago, in busier times. This is the UK's second busiest roll-on, roll-off port after Dover. Of goods carried on Irish registered trucks between the Republic and mainland Europe, nearly 3/4 pass through Welsh ports. But not, it seems, right now.
We knew the beginning of the year was going to be quiet because of all the stockpiling at the end of 2020, and we knew that due to lockdowns there was going to be a reduction in for instance, non-food retail shipments. But the levels, they haven't recovered that much. They're still 50% down.
One haulier took this photo earlier this week of a near-empty ferry from Wales to Ireland.
It's like a ghost town. The one we shipped Monday night, there was our truck on there and just a unit and a few drop trailers.
He says complexity in the new EU-UK customs procedures and other paperwork is to blame, and he's not alone.
Took me 14 days to do one job.
What have been the problems?
Customs.
Ports in Wales, most of all Holyhead, are a major part of the so-called land bridge between the Republic of Ireland and continental Europe. Freight coming to and from ports like Dublin and Rosslare travels through the UK and over the English Channel. But recent weeks have seen a big shift to alternative routes, including far more freight going directly between Ireland and France and Spain. Some Irish hauliers tell us it's become easier to use Scottish and English ports going into Northern Ireland rather than using their usual Wales-Ireland route. All of which leaves Welsh ports like Holyhead, one of the biggest employers on Anglesey, looking exposed.
People are extremely nervous, but at the moment it's that uncertainty, and I just want some reassurance from the government that the port of Holyhead is a strategic port and that they will do everything possible to safeguard it.
The UK government tonight said freight levels across all UK ports have been lower as anticipated, but flows are steadily increasing. Holyhead and other Welsh ports will continue to thrive with their best days ahead, said a spokesperson. How can they be so sure, is the view of the Welsh government.
Well, we were hoping that as things settle down, the companies will realise that coming through the Welsh ports is a better option. But of course, that's a risk to take because they may get used to new ways of working, which might be better for them, but it'll certainly not be better for the Welsh economy, nor for UK industry.
Tonight, in a further statement, the Welsh government said it's increasingly concerned about reports of hauliers bypassing Wales to use other routes into Northern Ireland. Such concerns, they said, have been escalated urgently to the UK government.
Now, Northern Ireland's Chief Constable has called for people to step back from the brink after tensions built up around new customs checks at ports in Belfast and Larne. After Brexit, facilities were set up to inspect goods coming into Northern Ireland from Great Britain. But officials carrying out those checks have been withdrawn after threats. The arrangements are designed to keep the land border with the Republic of Ireland open, but unionists criticise the arrangements for disrupting trade between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. Well, in another example of post-Brexit trade problems, many UK fishermen are now struggling to export their catch to the EU. New rules around water quality mean they can't export live molluscs, like oysters and clams, to Europe, leaving those who rely on the trade facing the loss of their livelihoods. Crab and lobster fishermen aren't affected by these particular rules, but say they're also facing widespread problems at the border. Our business and global trade correspondent, Paul McNamara, is in Cornwall. Paul.
Yes, Chris, it's less than 2 months ago since I was stood at a different freezing cold spot. It was outside Downing Street on Christmas Eve, waiting for the announcement of a Brexit deal, an announcement that was delayed and delayed and delayed because we were told negotiators were going line by line, species by species, to hammer out a deal. Well, look, despite their best efforts, so far, for most of the fishermen we speak to, Brexit hasn't quite lived up to expectations. For some, it's worse than others. For the oyster fishermen we've been speaking to today, some of them have been saying to us, Brexit hasn't just been bad for business, it could cause the end of their business. It's a process that's hardly changed in centuries. Oyster farming in Falmouth is a legacy livelihood.
It goes back a long way, you know, a long, long way. I mean, my great-grandfather was selling to the same people I sell to.
Go on then, who's this?
This is Jonathan Bailey, he's a local oysterman. And yeah, we've been buying Jonathan's oysters now for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, something like that, you know.
Jonathan is one of the few oyster fishermen on the Fowl, but only for the domestic market, because the EU don't think the crystal clear waters of the Fowl are quite crystal clear enough. So as a non-member nation, these oysters, mussels, clams, cockles and scallops fished here are now not allowed into the EU unless they have already been treated in purification plants. It is causing unimaginable damage to this almost £400 million a year industry.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, we've got 52 men and women out of work since the 4th of January.
Not working at all?
Not working at all, no, none of them. One boat was collecting a few oysters for us. One boat goes out for Queens for our local market. 40 minutes, they've caught what we need for that week. So yeah, that's it really.
The Brexit agreement does mean that in the future, the UK will gain quota and will regain the ability to negotiate catches with the EU. But so far, from Scottish fishermen complaining about quotas to Cornish crabbers finding that their shipment stalls due to customs, to these oystermen, so far the Brexit many in the industry voted for has failed to deliver. The fear for some is it could actually end their business.
We were promised a route to market, we were promised forms that could accompany export help certificates that would accompany our products. They're not even forthcoming. So yeah, it just drives us crazy really.
So this is where the action's happening now, is it?
Well, at the moment, yeah.
Up on the North Cornwall coast, Paul says there's no point sending his boat to sea right now, so it's maintenance time. Paul fishes for crabs, and crabs are allowed into the EU, but only if the customs agents are happy with the new paperwork.
At the moment, it feels like you're gambling with a lorry load, and a lorry load of fish is approximately £50,000. We don't know if we're going to get it to our customer. We don't know when we're going to get it to our customer. Time scale means everything to Shellfish, so I might as well go to the casino, put 50,000 on black and red, and either win or lose, because that's what it feels like I'm doing at the moment.
The lottery, Paul says, will probably sort itself out at some point. What won't, he says, is the delivery time to France now because of export paperwork. With a fair wind, it used to take 16 hours. With a fair wind now...
Now we're 2 to 3 days.
2 to 3 days?
At the moment.
So far, the fishing business has been battered by Brexit here. For some that bought into pre-deal promises, this isn't the honeymoon they were hoping for.
Well, when it all started, we had flags flying on the boats. Oh, Brexit, we're going to be free, get our own waters back.
Did you have one of the flags?
Yeah, we had a flag. We got a brand new flag, put it up. I wouldn't even put it up now. I wouldn't even use it for a rag, what's happened to us.
It was originally thought the ban on oysters and mussels was a temporary one. It's now indefinite. The government say an urgent change of position is needed from the EU, blaming them of not acting legally. A technical dossier is being worked on. But while dossiers are worked on, fish are going uncaught, bills and wages are going unpaid. Fishing was one of the hardest and fiercest fought battles of Brexit. Post-deal, the only thing calm here now, the waters themselves.
Well, of course, fishermen across the UK are facing the same problems as those we've just been hearing from in Cornwall. Earlier, I spoke to Alistair Sinclair, who's the national coordinator of the Scottish Creel Fishermen's Association, about how Brexit is affecting the fishing industry in Scotland. And I started by asking him which was a bigger problem, Brexit or COVID?
I wouldn't say either of them is better than the other, because the COVID is a situation not of our doing. Brexit is a situation not of our doing either. But the impact of both together has been tremendous on the inshore fleet.
Right, but a lot of fishermen voted for Brexit.
Well, that's a travesty of it all. If you can recall, Scotland returned a 62% remain. And many of the creel fishermen who were warned about the pending difficulties, or the difficulties that we're now going through, did not vote to leave Europe, because we understood what Europe meant for the low-impact, high-value fishermen that rely on being able to send their product to Europe.
And so do you think English fishermen took a different view to Scottish fishermen?
Well, the shellfish fishermen, I would say, took a different view from those that saw the seas of opportunity. And whilst they were wringing their hands, we were alerted to the fact that should there be more tariffs created with trying to gain entry to Europe and more documentation, as has proved the case, we could be in big trouble.
And so what is the prospect for your industry?
At the present, it's pretty bleak. Unless Boris can do something, maybe he can wave a magic wand. I'm not quite sure on that one. He did promise us that he had an oven-ready deal, but it strikes me that he doesn't even have the oven-ready deal out of the freezer yet.
But what could he do that would solve the problem? What do you want him to do?
Well, he's got to sort this transition down at the borders. You know, our documentation requirements prior to Brexit was one document actually carried for a whole truck load of goods. Now we need numerous documents. I think it's about 7 or 8 now. They're not quite sure. And if the documentation is not written on in the right colour of ink, they will return the load. You know, and all these things have just came to bear since the 1st of January.
I mean, there's nothing you're saying that sounds hopeful.
Well, you've got to look to government to give you that hope. You know, we keep our head down generally and try not to get involved in the politics of the matter. But since the days of Ted Heath and Margaret Thatcher, it's been a downward spiral as far as the inshore fishery is concerned.
And so what do you think that means for you personally? Do you think you'll be back on your boat at all?
We all live in hope. We all live in hope that there will be a remedy to all of this, but we're in fits of despair this now. I've been speaking to men for days now who really are wondering whether there's any future for them and their families and the coastal communities from where they come.